Welcome back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. George McMillan III stuck around. George, welcome back. Nice to see you again. I'm guessing you're doing great as you were earlier.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, every moment with you is great.
I know. Many people have told me that.
Yeah.
Both in the online Working Brother world and in real life. Anyway, let's not talk about my personal life because nobody wants to know about that. Let's get back to these comedic routines that George has set up for us, because this is a comedy show after all. Everything we say here is a joke and nothing has anything to do with reality. If you missed it, George went through a grand total of, like, what did we do, George? Like 8 slides, 10 slides in the last hour. We might get another 10 done. We might get another 5 done. You never know with George. So here we are, adding explanatory and predictive power to philosophy and the social sciences. That is what we're doing, George. That is exactly what we're doing.
All right.
What an intro, huh?
Yeah. We were leaving off on that. The two trends that my frameworks are tracking of technology population growth over time. They come from Robert Fogel's charts. He won a Nobel Prize in 1992. And then the two secondary trends of jobs moving south and people moving north, and we're going to a global wage equilibrium scale. If you left everybody in the South and didn't let them migrate, then you would have a cascading set of fourth world failed states in the third world. But instead, our illustrious elites have decided to go to an open borders mass migration to even out the population growth. And instead, we're just going to end up with a bunch of fourth world failed states. And in the next, I was about to say 10 years, but I mean, it could be like a year.
Or 2, yeah. I mean, like if we're lucky, we might push it back like 20 years, if we're lucky. But like, if we're not, it could be within a year or 2, yeah, highly likely. Yeah. Not impossible.
No, absolutely not impossible. That's the problem. It depends on a few things occurring or not occurring. But yeah, with the global population charts, the reason why I've been talking about that lately I've been on with Stuart Turley and the Energy Newsbeat and Ann Vandersteel.
You say it might happen, depends on some things. I've got a meme for that. This is a comedy show. Can we bomb Russian air bases? No, it can lead to an escalation. We bombed Russian air bases. They didn't actually bomb the base. They bombed right next to the base, but a Russian air base in Syria. But yeah, on the subject of will we be here next week, and will society continue?
That could be one of the concerns.
the least of, let's put it that way. Adding explanatory.
I went over the Middle East strategic plans between the Sunni Shia and Israelis on Dr. Leib Lee's show a week or 2 ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an hour, because we did the population growth charts first, because the population growth escalating. Demographers have been looking at this for a long time, and then all of a sudden people start to see tens of millions of people come across the border since 2015. Oh no, that was, demographers can see that coming from a long way off. None of these problems are new. Just the average person is seeing them. But if you're looking at these charts for decades like I've been, yeah, it's absolutely predictable. Not gone the way I wanted to. I don't run anything. I just build the models and do my own stuff, and the government does whatever they do. So anyway, academically speaking, if you go down to slide 30,
mm-hmm.
The point here is where is it? In the Strauss-Cropsey book, History of Political Theory, History of Political Philosophy, excuse me. He's the end of it, a guy named the former head of the Chicago Political Science Department in his epilogue, which was written decades ago, was talking about, yeah, there you go, history of political philosophy and being in time. At the end of it, he starts talking about they need to get the government form theories back in with the classical questions of the ancient Greeks being the nomos physis distinction. The nomos physis distinction is the laws of man versus laws of nature, or in terms of the 20th century great ideological experiments, it's the ideologies versus human nature. In what system do men and women, we're going under the domain gender two, the two gender domain specific premise.
The horror.
At what? Yeah, the horror. I know. I'm just a real right wing individual. Under what system do they compete more constructively versus destructively? So in psychological personality theories, they're all based on constructive versus destructive dichotomies. Aristotle's six forms of government is based on the constructive proper forms and the destructive behavioral forms are in the perverted forms. So those things match up. And with my 5 frameworks, now you have the running theme. Field of economics is virtuous economic cycles versus vicious economic cycles. That's how they do their constructive destructive. So all of them, all these fields have some type of constructive versus destructive behavioral dichotomy. And if you use the value neutral bifurcated form of modeling that's used in Aristotle's 6 forms of government, then all these theories all just line up into a dual independent Cartesian style model. It's also Pareto optimal, by the way. But so you have this whole system based on people pursuing resources and mates constructively or destructively. In Darwinian terms, that's for self-survival and survival of the species. In Harsanyi's economic terms, he thought the two primary motivations should be economic gain and social status. That's Anthony Downs' Economic Theory of Democracy in 1957. Social status was Thorstein Veblen's 1899 book, The Leisure Class. So you're saying those two should be you should take those two motivations and make a macro theory into a physics style model based on those two motivations. Well, those two motivations line up with pursuing resources and mates used in anthropology and sociology, and self-survival and survival of the species in Darwinian theory. So now you have a whole bunch of primary motivations that are all very, very similar. So now you can operationalize Martin Heidegger's 2 variables of being and time. That's being and becoming over time, or life force energies as it relates to changing forms over time. So the changing forms over time are, guess what? You have Tubin-Kazmita's integrated model of evolutionary psychology related to the value forms of Eric Fromm's productive versus sadomasochistic character orientation dichotomy, Aristotle's proper and perverted forms of government, virtuous and vicious economic cycles leading to one of the 4 category geopolitical form outcomes. So those are your changing forms, and your 2 primary trends, 2 secondary trends. That's what's changing the forms. So now you can fully operationalize Martin Heidegger's being in time, because Leo Strauss thought that he had the highest realm of consciousness. Well, Heidegger and Carl Jung and Freud have the biggest or the most depth psychology works in human history. So now you can take, Heideggerian and Jungian depth psychology and now transfer it to the rest of the social sciences and operationalize it into those 5 frameworks. So I got the holy grail here that's taken humankind 2,500 years to do. And yes, I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of university professors who will have a nose out of joint saying that, but the proof is, here it is. It's in writing. Herbert Gintis, a whole bunch of guys spent their whole lives, never got a research design, never got that. I got the research design, Aristotle's 6 forms of government and per capita GNP function, and had the nucleus to then spread out. So I got the overarching philosophical architecture, the research design, the Cartesian model, and the explanatory theory. So yes, I've completed the whole grand slam there. So that's what this is. And then the geopolitics, these things are very predictive. Instead of having a cascading set of 4th world countries, in the developing world, we're probably going to have a cascading set of bankruptcies in the 1st world, which then will also occur in the 4th world. It only delays the inevitable a couple of decades. And now that was a couple of decades ago. That was the problem with that. So a lot of these problems are foreseeable. So let's go down.
George, as I was scrolling with the slide set, I realized that you've got your website down there. I want to highlight that and remind people that the links to your website are in the description as always, because I forgot to last recording. So there's that. Second of all, I want to thank everybody who has bought a coffee and remind you that you can buy me a coffee, that this channel is not eligible for monetization, and also I want to thank the patrons. So yeah, that's about that. We've gotten to page 32, in case you're wondering, George.
Yeah, I already went over this before. Yeah, that was. So
shall we move on to 33?
Yeah, that's John Harsanyi's book. It's a compilation of his papers, and his 1960 paper in that one starts talking about laterally integrating the disciplines. His 1966 paper, I forget the exact titles, that was the one where he was starting to talk about having economic gain, social status as your 2 primary motivations to build a model on. It's consistent with everything else as I was doing. His criteria fit perfectly into what I was already doing, so I met his criteria. His 69 paper was that you need a model because people think that the stupid social sciences professors think that if you do take a course of action, everything good flows from it, and then everything bad they attribute it to their political opponent. Well, in real life, that's not true. You have, between Aristotle's 6 forms of government and your 4-category geopolitical form model, whatever your wage labor rate ratio is dictates the kind of government you get. People do not choose the government. It's economic growth, population growth proportions that dictate which kind of government you get.
I think we covered that like 3-4 talks ago, something like that. It's been a while.
Yeah, but
we went really deep into that.
Yeah. So then go to
35.
Yeah, or go to 30. Yeah, I already went over Veblen again, where those where social status comes from. I don't want to get into the difference between classical economics and neoclassical economics, but real quick, neoclassical economics based on marginal utility is based, well, what's marginal utility? Elites always want something exclusive. Why do they want something exclusive? They want social status. There's no reason to get a Bugatti or some of these cars, but people get it because they can. And if you can afford it, yeah, great. The technology is fantastic. Edward O. Wilson spent his, he was a professor for Tubia and Cosmides. Yeah, he died a couple years ago, and John Tooby died last year. So, yeah, that crop of evolutionary theorists that were pushing to that wanted this, that were wondering why the philosophical and social sciences were so messed up. Yeah, they've just died. Her Sunni died in the 1990s. But yeah, everything that these guys wanted done, I've completed after their death, unfortunately.
Moving
So
on.
yeah. So when you
36?
get down to 36, yeah, there's your chart. So if you want to operationalize Heidegger's being and becoming into an empirical chart for the people that do study philosophy, you're taking Plato's concepts of forms, putting them into Aristotelian frameworks. You're actually blending the two, and then you achieve operationalizing Heidegger, which Leo Strauss says has the deepest form of consciousness. I actually think the Freudian cyclical model of the id, ego, superego is inadequate for this model. So I changed it to life forces being, instinctual drives, and cognition as my three element cyclical model. I think Fromm should have done that in his book. He didn't think of it, but Fromm advanced Freud's life and death instinct theory, but didn't change the cyclical model to match it. So I just did it in my models to make that change, to make it congruent, because I'm trying to operationalize Heidegger. Physics models are about measuring force. You're trying to isolate it as a cause variable. You can't measure it, but you can measure what it does. So I had to change the cyclical model to isolate that variable, because you have to separate animate objects from inanimate objects. Inanimate objects do not have life force energies. Animate objects do. So by going with a life force, instinctual drive, cognition model, I'm able to do that. So over time, you're talking about population growth over time. So yeah, it's got to be those frameworks with what changes over time in its technology and population growth. That's just how I do that.
All right.
So yeah, there's only a few slides left. We already went through some of this on the way in. Now we went from left to right with my Cartesian model. Now we're starting at the end and going backwards again. In complexity theory, you have to show how your elements of the model relate to the model going one direction, and then equations have to work both directions, so you got to go back the other direction. So it's done this way to meet the criteria of complexity theory. So here you're working backwards with the two trends, the four category geopolitical form model, more developed countries, high economic growth, low population growth, less developed countries, lower economic growth, high population growth, catastrophically loose wage labor rate. Go to 38. Here it's relating to the dependent variable of the per capita GDP ratio. It's showing here that the per capita GDP ratio merges well with the outcome measure system. It can also mean economic growth over in-person polity. So it adds the resource constraint ratio to Aristotle's 6 forms of government. Here's all three frameworks together, Aristotle's 6 forms of government. The proper forms are the governments where the elite invest more in their people. So the multiplier coefficient goes up. And if the population growth is manageable, then the Gini coefficient will improve measuring wage labor equity. But if population growth is too high, you can have high economic growth and high population growth, and you'll be running your numerator correctly, but the denominator will be going out of whack. So you could still have have high income inequality under those conditions. Again, leftists start taking money out of investment, trying to increase equity. They end up collapsing economic growth. And then, yeah, both your numerator and your denominator go the wrong direction. So yeah, here's just all of the three frameworks just lined up. This is more like an appendix section. Yeah, and that's Tubin-Kazmita's integrated causal model. The frameworks are listed at the bottom, listed to Eric Fromm's Biophilus Necrophilus. That's abstract causality. His empirical analysis is based on observing people compete for resources and mates. So it's productive sadomasochistic character orientation. He's doing that because he wants to merge his thought with Jung and Heidegger, and also meet the needs of the empirical psychological community also. So he's competing he did his theory so it works in the foundation of philosophy of the mind, or philosophy of psychology, and also works practically on the lower social scientific level. And that brings us to 41, which is part 2. So yeah, we're done for the day.
You don't want to do more? For real? No, we can't do that.
Well, I mean, let's just stop here for the sake of the video.
This was like a teaser.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this just goes over Seymour Lipset's, his formulation of the right. He got the right sequence of democracy, economic development, and geopolitical development. He got the sequence right. So that's how I got my sequence for my independent variable, dependent variable, and outcome measure system. The purpose of this is just to show how close the social sciences were to having a unified behavioral theory in 1959. Then the leftists came along, got rid of the scientific project, and got rid of this. Instead of moving it up, they detracted it.
Are you a conspiracy theorist? Do you consider yourself a conspiracy theorist, George?
Hold on a second. I got to read the meme. Oh, yeah. No, I haven't. I've been doing these models for...
So you don't consider yourself a conspiracy theorist? Like all of these are not conspiracy theories?
I've been working every single day.
Yeah, but wouldn't you consider all of these conspiracy theories?
Of course. Well, all my books come from the military academies, the war colleges, and major universities. So they're the ones behind everything, right?
Exactly. And you're coming up with theories about the conspiratorial nature of some things that are happening. So by definition, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Seymour Lipset, 1959. Some social requisites for democracy. What are social requisites for democracy?
He had the right sequence. At that time, the field of economics didn't have the general equilibrium theories, the Arrow-Debreu models, and the economic growth theories, the Solow-Swan type models. For him to actually put a full functioning framework and then operationalize all 6 forms of Aristotle's government, he talks about it. The social requisites are to have a democracy, you have to have a certain educational levels, certain economic growth levels, certain amount of infrastructural development, and structure is physical plant, job growth. So he starts to name these things, and towards the end he starts talking about, well, how would you use, the entirety of Aristotle's 6 forms of government? Well, I took that idea and then just took the advances in economic theory and just started building my model out. That's all that was. The purpose of this being in there is just to show, because I had some professors really get their nose out of joint when I sent these papers in, because you're supposed to list what if your model achieves objectives, you're supposed to list it. So I listed them in order. Okay, it was well. Never mind about the reviewer. The reviewer was not a game theory person. The game theory people love what I do. This was a non-game theoretic person, individual. Kind of like a DEI hire type of individual.
I was just gonna say, as soon as you said individual, I was like, was it a female by any chance?
Yeah, it was a female. Yeah, the female reviewer got so like upset.
700 pounds and like purple hair.
Yeah. Actually, you're right. Actually, you're right about that. Yeah. It wasn't one of them. It was the whole group. Yeah, it was actually. But they got. You can see how much I really cared. I was laughing. I won't name the participants involved.
It's a comedy show. Nothing here we say has anything to do with reality.
I was showing how I met the criteria of the people that I just listed. Okay, my models weren't expansive at that time. But the person kept on having me write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite my proposals. After the entire month, and I spent 120 man hours on doing this. Okay, I should have just withdrew my proposal. But I just typed back in all capital letters because this person was obviously dense, to say the least. So the person then had to write back to me. I thought it was hilarious. The person started talking about my spelling errors. Well, I got spell check. She was talking about I used an American spelling for the words instead of a British spelling. Like if you spell labor differently, that really throws people off.
Time out. She was British on top of everything?
The stupidity. Oh yeah. Oh well, you know. Yeah, well.
and she really for real she bitched about she seriously bitched about like labor and like because what's the other word?
No, not specifically. She was trying to say I was uneducated. But I was showing her how
you're speaking American. You just don't use enough U's in your fabulous spelling.
Yeah, so I didn't I was showing her how I met the criteria of each one of these people, and she writes back, "Oh, he thinks he's the greatest genius." She treated me like I was an NPD rather than I objectively met the criteria. Mm-hmm. She couldn't evaluate. She didn't want to make a decision of whether I met the criteria or not. So she couldn't hit the top end of Graham's hierarchy scale, so she hit the bottom end of it.
Yeah. Why am I not surprised?
Yeah. So I mean, all you can do is laugh. Yeah, it was me writing back in capital letters because at that time I was like, okay, this person really just wasted 120 man hours of mine, and she can't make a decision. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just withdrew. That would have been the mature thing.
I think it was a lesson in colonialism. I think it was a lesson in colonialism.
Oh yeah, I just never. I just stick in behavioral economics and game theory. I just stay right there. And they love me. Yeah. They just about roll out.
I'm gonna have to break this up with a meme.
Yeah.
Did this come across your feed? This is Air Serbia flight leaving Lebanon as Lebanon is being bombed by the aircraft carrier in the Middle East. Crazy, huh? Evacuation flight.
Yeah.
What's your take on what's going on in the Middle East? I got your take a little bit before we started recording. You're saying your take hasn't changed. So do you want to remind people of what your take is, just and how it ties into like the 7 P's of what's going on in the US of A, as Borat calls it?
Yeah, I got better at explaining this, or at least finding out like what works with different people, what works with regular people that haven't been working with me for a long time. The in any given area, you have ethnic rival. Well, you have rivalries of the people that live there, so they're ethnic, religious, and linguistic. So you have rivalries occurring with a region, and each one of them wants something different. So each one of them has a strategic goal, and then those strategic goals of that region, of that area, are operating within the strategic goals of the regional powers, and the regional powers are working within the strategic plans of the major powers, superpowers. So when every time you get a region like this, you have an overlay of different competing strategic plans that are coming to bear on that. So it's never a simple answer. You have the, well, okay. You have
let me do a rundown for you, real quick summary. You have the Sunni, you have the Shia, you have the Christians, you have the Alawites, you have the Israelis, you have the not so Israelis, and then you have petrodollars and pipelines, and then you have some gas fields, and then you have like Qataris and Iranis, and then you have like the Turks and did I cover everyone? Oh, the Yemenis. Don't forget the Yemenis.
Oh, you can mention the Kurds, the Yazidis, and the Syrians.
Oh, that's going a little.
But yeah, the way I break this thing down is obviously, well, the three religions: Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Even though I didn't list them in order, you have those three religions, and within Islam, you have the Sunni versus Shia. So and I got to go through this for the people who haven't heard it before. When the Shia had their Iranian revolution in 79, so late 79, late 78 going into 79, they created a theocracy. A theocracy is the only legitimate form of government in Islam because when Muhammad died, the imams elected a caliph amongst themselves. So they voted for each other and elected one of themselves. So that set the precedent that a caliph is elected by the imams. Family dynasties are illegitimate forms of government in Islam, and Western forms of government, like Aristotle's 6 forms of government, are illegitimate in Islam. Only a caliph elected by the imams is legitimate. So then the Sunnis want a theocracy too. So the Grand Mosque seizure, and people need to watch everything and read everything that they can about the Grand Mosque seizure of November, December 79, the jihadists took over the Grand Mosque and they wanted the House of Saud to step aside. House of Saud didn't. They brought in the French and other Pakistanis to put down the rebellion. A lot of people got killed. They ended up flooding and electrocuting the people in the basement that took over the mosque. They executed the non-imams that were involved in this, but they couldn't execute the imams because it's the Grand Mosque in Mecca. You can't touch the imams. The imams demand, there you go. Okay, yeah, that's what we're talking about here.
Why not? We have the internet in front of us, so I figured like I'd bring up some visuals. Anyway, go on.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah. So, the coup leaders that you had in the picture there, they executed them. They beheaded them on the Friday like they always do. But they made a deal with the imams and the oil sheiks. Boy, this goes so many different directions. that they would start building the Salafi Wahhabi mosques everywhere. So they started building them in the West, but they also started building them in Pakistan. General Zia al-Haq of Pakistan assassinated the first Bhutto in 77 and took power. Now you can say he met the criteria of being a caliph because he was a one-man ruler with the support of the imams. So you could say he was a caliph, not just a general. Maybe kind of a backdoor way of doing it, but you could make that argument. He started working with people from the Arabian Peninsula, not just the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but Qatar and the UAE also started getting massive funding to build the mosques, the Sunni Salafi Wahhabi mosques in Pakistan. A lot of people are very confused about this. If you watch some of the old videos about Afghanistan, especially Rory Stewart's video on the Great Game, he talks about, well, 60s and 70s, it was Shangri-La, people going through Iran, through Afghanistan on their way to Shangri-La in the Jammu Kashmir region of Pakistan and India to see, their yogis or whatever they were, whatever they're into up there. Well, that and smoking a lot of hash on the way, apparently, or whatever else they do. I don't know. But he's wondering how it went from that really loose Hanafi Sufi form of Islam to the Wahhabi form of Islam that it is today. And that's because people from the Arabian Peninsula, not just one country, all of them, started building these mosques under General Zia al-Haq to build the radical mosque in Pakistan, but also with the Pashtun in Afghanistan also. Zbigniew Brzezinski and the Brits came in and decided that they were going to arm and weaponize these people to go against Najibullah's government in Afghanistan. Eventually, they overthrew it. When they overthrew it, the Russians could see that this form of Islam was being pushed into their southern republics. So then the Russians invaded Afghanistan. They did not, against the Western narrative, they did not just wake up and invade Afghanistan one night. Just like they did not wake up one night and decide to invade Ukraine for no reason.
Wait, mind blown. So not only was Putin's invasion of Ukraine not unprovoked, link here to like one of the first talks we did, but also, are you telling me that Afghanistan was also not unprovoked? It wasn't just because like the Soviets were bored and they wanted to like conquer more territory?
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Yes.
Well, then why did they do it? I don't understand.
Yeah, so they wanted to push down the Sunni versus Shia fundamentalism going into that area because it's going to go into their southern republics. Why is it going to go into their southern republics? The Shia wanted to form the Shia crescent. If you can bring up a Sunni versus Shia map, I have tons of them on my other slide sets.
Yeah, hold on. I'll do it in the background. Keep talking.
Bring one up on Google. It helps people. If people can see a Sunni versus Shia ethnic map of the region, then all of a sudden everything starts to make sense. Without it, nothing makes sense.
Hold on, I got it coming.
The Shia Persians want to take over all the Shia areas, whether it be Shia Hazara area inside Afghanistan or go in the other direction, the Shia Arabs across the Arab Peninsula in the Middle East and then into the Levant. So they want to correlate. They want to coalesce those people. So if that's the Shia strategy to form the Shia crescent going through Kurdistan and into Lebanon and Syria, where the Alawite Shia are, well, and then down in Yemen and south of Jeddah, you got to move the map up a little bit because the other half of the area is, okay, that orange area down in northern Yemen and southern Saudi Arabia, south of Jeddah, is where that orange stops.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the Shia Arab areas of that side of the Arabian Peninsula. So they want to envelop also where the oil fields are in the Daman region of Saudi Arabia on the Persian Gulf. That's a Shia area too, as is Kuwait and southern Iraq. So they want to link those areas. The brown areas or the tan areas are desert. Nobody lives in them anyway. So where you see those green and those colored splotches, that's where people live. That's where the oases are. The other part is just desert, just so people, understand. So the Shia are trying to coalesce the Shia areas. So now the Sunnis are like, oh, wait, we're behind now. We got to contain the Shia. So they have their Grand Mosque meeting. The Saudi Arabia decides that they're going to start funding the radical mosques. So they join with General Zia al-Haq to start putting the Salafi Wahhabi mosques in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Al-Haq is an Islamist who doesn't like atheist Marxist communism. So he wants to get rid of that in Afghanistan. Well, just go straight across Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, and into East Turkestan, which is Xinjiang province in China. So he wants to arm the Pashtun and the Mujahideen to take over all of those areas. Now, what's their motivation for doing it? They want to reestablish the Khorasan area so then they can march and attack Israel to bring back the Mahdi. So that you have the Shia moving into southern Syria, southern Lebanon. So they've been in position to attack Israel from the north, meet the Hadith prophecies, bring back Jesus Christ, who says, no, he's not the Messiah. The Messiah is coming. The 12th Imam comes back. The Mahdi comes back, says he is the Messiah, and then he rules over the earth. The Shia are in the position to do that right now. The part that I'm confused about is the Shia Persians. Well, yeah, they're in line with the Shia Arabs, and they're pushing for this. But yeah, obviously, the only true, whether you call it a Mahdi or a Messiah, whatever their messianic figure is, there's different conceptions of that. But right now, I'm going to lump him in to be the same for the simplicity. That can only be a direct descendant of Abraham. So he had three wives, Hagar, Sarah, and Keturah. The Judaism comes from Sarah. The Arab line comes from Hagar and Keturah. So you would have to be one of those direct descendants. So you can only be a Jew, you can only be an Arab. You can't be a Persian. You can't be a Turk and bring that thought lineage back. But I guess their motivation is if they bring back the Shia thought lineage, then I guess they move up in the world. But they're going by these very strict theological, rational belief, constraint models, because that's what strategic plans are. They're rational actor models. From your belief system, it dictates what your preferences are, and then you're limited by your constraints, how much resources you have and money. All right. So the Sunni have then say, well, now we have to attack from the Khorasan. The Khorasan province in Afghanistan, in Iran rather, is in the eastern part of Iran. Afghanistan is East Khorasan. Iran is basically West Khorasan. So the Sunnis have dumped all this money into putting the Salafi Wahhabi mosques and the Pashtun tribes, because the Pashtun tribes are believed to be 6 of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. But they converted to Islam centuries ago. So they're the Hebrews who followed the correct prophet path and switched over to Islam. So now, according to their prophecies, they're supposed to be able to sweep across Iran and attack Israel. Well, they can't do that they need to do it from the north, so they need to take over Jordan, Syria, or Lebanon. But the Shia Hezbollah are in southern Syria, southern Lebanon, so they got to move into northern Jordan. So the big fight between the Shia and the Sunni in Syria is to get rid of the Shias so the Sunnis can attack Israel from the north.
George,
right. No.
Propagandist.
We just started.
Did you forget that there was like a pipeline that was supposed to go through Saudi from Qatar?
Oh no. Remember exactly what I said. Remember exactly what I said at the beginning. You have a regional conflict. I mean, you have a local conflict between ethnic, religious, and linguistic lines. You have a regional strategic plans, then you have super regional strategic plans. So I didn't get to this. I didn't get to the global superpower strategic plans because that's where the oil wells come in. So no, I didn't forget a damn thing. All right.
I know. I didn't think you did, man. I'm just joking. It was
No,
like I was triggering
I
you.
don't forget anything. I go in a particular
you.
order. Yeah, I know. I go in a particular order because
But
you don't have people don't have strategic level modeling. Not that many people understand it. People on these are used to watching news shows. Oh, this happened today and that happened today, and they're surprised by the news every day or whatever. Or they can do some kind of little trend analysis, but strategic analysis is predictive because you already know what the sides are going to do. So then you know what the conflict is going to be about, and then you can know who wins, and then you can guess, who on different criteria of who's probably going to win that and why. And then there's always something unexpected that happens also. So you then have Zbigniew Brzezinski coming in and arming the Sunni groups in Pakistan when it was the Mujahideen, and it was the Pashtun versus the Uzbek, and the Uzbeks and the Tajiks versus the Russians. But as soon as the Russians retreated, Najibullah fell in 96. The Taliban took over. Well, then it's the Pashtun wanting their territory back in Pakistan and wanting to push the Tajiks and the Uzbeks back across the border, and the United States wanting them to contain Iran. So then, yes, you have the nation building project in Afghanistan, and then we left, and it's a regime change destabilization program. Why? Because nation building didn't work, so now they're going to go to the secondary plan of having these groups destabilize Iran because they want the Shia out of power, because now they need to reroute the pipelines underneath the Caspian system to underneath the Caspian Sea through Iran, Armenia, Georgia, to feed Germany before it collapses and the AfD takes over. But then you have the East, you have the Tajiki Taliban, which aren't really accepted by the Pashtun. They worked together for a while when it was convenient, but they want to take over and obliterate the Tajiki Afghanistan border. Also funded is the East Turkestan movement. All these movements were funded by Operation Cyclone in the late 70s, early 80s until the present. But their job is to obliterate the national boundaries, Duran Line, East Turkestan province and Xinjiang province, China, and destabilize that region. The sea powers, the Anglosphere, wants them to disrupt as much Russian and Chinese natural gas pipelines and railroad systems as possible. They also want them to pivot against Iran. They also fund these different groups, and you see this in the Sean Ryan show with Tulsi Gabbard. They don't know why these groups are getting funded, where they change the name of it and call it the Free Syrian Army, but yet the money and the funding and the training and the equipping also goes to al-Nusra Front and Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which then became ISIS. And they're wondering why this is occurring. Well, it's because of the pipelines.
You know, you mentioned ISIS, and hold on. You mentioned ISIS, and I was looking while you were talking at this religious map, and here we've got pink, Christianity, various denominations, and I just happened to notice that, that's exactly where ISIS was. If you remember when they cleansed out that really old Christian community, one of the oldest Christian communities in Syria. It just happens to be the exact same area.
Oh, yeah. Well, every time the United States goes into a place and destabilizes it, the same thing as what we were talking about before with communism. the ethnic hostilities increase, they don't decrease. It didn't decrease genocide, it increased genocide.
Are
That's
you
what all
saying
these
that the globalist American empire is communist?
Well, they are atheists. The neocons are absolute. Well, never mind. Don't even. We'll get nuked if we go that direction. We'll get nuked off of. Yeah, never mind.
This
You'll get
is Reddit,
you'll get
and
100
Reddit
strikes
doesn't
in a
let
row.
me zoom in for some reason. So when I zoom in, it like actually zooms out, and like, but this is the best we can get. But these are oil fields and stuff around this area. I've got some other maps coming up because that is what George likes talking about: pipelines and petrodollars. Go on,
Yeah.
George. Sorry.
But I want to get back to it. This is very, very important because now the West has been interfering in these theological rivalries without really understanding them. And they're going to different, and they're arming these groups, and they don't really know which direction that they're going in. So that's why the Indians say that they've created Frankenstein's monster because the U.S. equipped the Mujahideen in the 1980s. And yes, it's the same group of people as the Taliban. That's why I call it the Sunni Pashtun Taliban. And you got the Sunni Tajik Taliban. You have the Shia Hazara, and then more of the Sufi Hanafi Uzbek groups. They're traditional. I label them in groups so people can understand where they're going to align and where they're going to conflict and under what circumstances. That's how I build my regional strategic models that are predictive. So yes, I do not do a news show. I do strategic modeling, and then you watch what happens in the news, and you can filter it through these frameworks and be very predictive and be proactive instead of reactive.
Or
So, that's why I do that.
or you can look at it through the lens of a comedy show and just laugh about it and not get emotionally hurt and entangled in it, you know.
Yeah, I got a lot of things I got to do. So yeah, I try to move this thing along a little bit.
Do you have any history of mental illness in your family? I have an uncle who believes Israel's version of events.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of American roulette?
No comment. We're moving right along here.
Back to the Middle East and the oil and the oil. No, this is religious distribution. Sorry, this is still religious distribution. Where's the oil? This is the oil. There we go.
Yeah.
Gas giants, oil giants. It's everywhere, George. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Right.
Why do they fight over it? Why don't they just share?
You didn't even get to the Caspian Sea side and the Russian side.
Yeah, because I can't find a map that covers all of it.
Yeah, the other day I did a video on, I did Wesley Clark's, 7 countries in 5 years, and the U.S. is already in Afghanistan, so that really means a total of 8 countries in 5 years. So you got Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan. Then you have Libya, Sudan, and then Somalia, which are all have a lot of oil and access to different seaports and maritime choke points. So yeah, the 8 countries in 5 years that Wesley Clark was talking about it's about energy deposits, maritime choke points, and land bridge choke points. It's all about those factors. So what I'm adding is the religious theological aspect that the neocons, I don't think that they factor. They try to create the proxy wars, but they think that they can control the proxy wars. And I don't think that they can control them as much as they think that they do, because they thought they could control the Arab Spring. Libya is now a disaster.
They thought they could control Operation Warp Speed. They also thought they could control Ukraine. And
I just think that everything that, like Mearsheimer says, everything that they had the reverse Midas touch, Everything that they do turns to garbage. We're going to leave it PG.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think everything that they do backfires. Yes.
You want to flip through some more memes? Did you? We didn't discuss the political side of those hurricanes. This is just a guy with a Tesla with a license plate that says EU gas, and as the storm's coming in, he's putting gas for his Tesla generator. I was just gonna say, how do you feel about the political atmosphere in the U.S. considering how far away is the election now? Like, when do you guys vote? Have you voted? Do you vote early?
Well, I'm not. Well, I need to do that. I'm too. I'm working 12 hours a day trying to finish stuff. So,
So you haven't had a chance to vote?
What's that?
You haven't had a chance to vote? What's your take on the political
I'm
atmosphere?
working 12-hour days trying to accomplish stuff. I got a lot of really pressing demands, which is why I don't have a lot of time.
Throwing a condom.
Yeah, a lot of things are coming to a head.
Do you think Trump has a realistic chance? All the polls have him ahead.
Yeah. Well, everybody knows what the problems were with the last election. So we'll just so you don't get any strikes on your show, we'll leave it at that.
Do you use ChatGPT, George? Have you used ChatGPT?
No.
As we were discussing your modeling, you should maybe ask ChatGPT to do like a game theory analysis of your paper. You can do that. Like, send it your paper and have it like analyze it for you.
Yeah, that's not really what I want to do right now.
All right. Do you want to get back to these slides, or do you want to call it a recording and call it a day?
I'll call it today. I really got pressing things I need to meet.
All right. Excellent. We'll put this tune on. George?
I got people waiting on me to deliver stuff, and I can't go faster. Got
it. George, thank you again for stopping by. Have a good one.
All right, later on. Ciao.
Peace.
See ya.
See you.